Now, Joyner Lucas, he just dropped an album last night. This album has been way overdue, and I think every Joyner Lucas fan out there will probably agree with me. The album is of course titled ADHD, and it's inspired by Joyner's own childhood diagnosis, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, which of course stands for ADHD. It was officially announced back in October 2018, but now it's finally out. The one thing I want to discuss in this video regarding the album is the release strategy, because as a lot of you might be aware, this was no traditional album rollout. According to Joyner Lucas himself, ADHD, the album served as a social experiment. That's what he said on the Suge remix with Tory Lanez. Why you keep dropping your album in increments? ADHD is a social experiment. Who pay attention the most when they hearing it? And that right there, that's the reason why pretty much more than half of the album was already out, even after the project itself dropped. So regarding the purpose of this strategy, we've already gotten the social experiment part out of the way. Like he said on Suge, if he drops his album in increments, who's really gonna listen? That's what he was going for. And then people with ADHD obviously have extremely short attention spans, and since this album was inspired by his own childhood diagnosis, he probably wanted to cater to people with ADHD by releasing his entire album piece by piece. Now, Joyner Lucas himself hasn't came out and said this, but that's my understanding of it all, at least. Regardless, I think the meaning behind why he did it was a very respectable one. Honestly, it's hard to hate on it because it's coming from a very good place. But just because the intentions were good doesn't mean that he nailed it, which if you ask me, I don't think he did. First of all, Joyner Lucas is trying to go against something he can't really beat here. A short attention span is the internet's middle name, and I think this release strategy left way too many people in the dark. And the bad part is, it left a lot of his own fans confused. For the last year, I've been seeing people spamming him with, "Where's ADHD? When is the album dropping?" Now, this is from his own supporters, and this tells me that what he was going for was received and understood by a very small portion of his fan base. To be honest, I think it completely went over people's heads. I remember the hype for this album actually being really high at one point, but I also remember how the release date of the project was kind of up in the air. Joyner himself didn't know when it was actually gonna drop. That's why it was delayed, and that's why it was unclear when it was actually gonna get released. But this whole album rollout of releasing one song every few months, it just didn't do it for me personally. Yes, the album just got released, but it feels like it's been released for damn near 2 years now. The first single from the album, which is I Love, got released back in October of 2018, which was when the album got announced. And the thing about this too is I Love is still my favorite song from the album. So the best song from the project, according to me of course, was the first single. On top of that, we got 4 skits on the album, which takes away from the actual music. So it's not really 18 songs, it's 14 minus 9 other tracks already being out, which leaves us with 5 new songs after all this wait. I think if this ADHD release strategy was way more focused, way more well thought out, Joyner Lucas could have made it work. But if you ask me, I think he set himself up for failure 100%. When your own fans aren't even aware of the purpose behind your strategy, I think that's an issue. I think there were too many loose ends. It was way too unorganized, you know, too much space between the tracks, the best ones getting released the earliest, skits that take away from the actual music, and the remaining new 5 songs not being that good anyway. I do want to cut him some slack though, considering the fact that he left his label, Atlantic, and went independent during the making of this album. That might have been a time of adaptation for him that could have taken away from the scheme for his album rollout. That's one thing to keep in mind. I was actually very excited for this project, and I was hoping that the rest of the album that was unheard would at least be hidden, but that wasn't the case, and ADHD was definitely not worth the wait. So yeah, that's my take on Joyner Lucas and the ADHD release strategy. What do you think about the way he went about dropping this album? The majority of this album got released piece by piece, and at the end we got 5 new records on the album. Do you think the purpose behind this strategy was a good and successful one or not? And by the way, what do you think about the album if you've heard it already? Definitely let me know in the comment section below, and let's have a discussion about this.